Welcome to the Global Risk Podcast by Solace Global. In this edition of Regional Flashpoints, we begin in Bolivia, where weeks of protests and roadblocks continue to disrupt transport networks, fuel supplies, and access to essential goods, placing growing pressure on President Rodrigo Paz's government. We then turn to the Philippines, where a powerful earthquake has caused fatalities, widespread infrastructure damage, and transport disruption across parts of Mindanao, renewing focus on disaster preparedness and resilience. To examine both developments and what they could mean in the weeks ahead, here's our intelligence analyst, Joshua George.
Large-scale protests are continuing to cause major transport and commercial disruption across Bolivia. In early May, labour unions started demonstrations over a controversial land reform, but quickly evolved into a popular movement against the right-wing government of Rodrigo Paz. The protests, which have consisted of approximately 100 roadblocks on key routes, have resulted in severe fuel and medicine shortages across the country, including in the capital, La Paz. On the 3rd of June, protesters seized the Humbate Suarez oil facility before police moved in to dislodge them. On the 25th of May, protests near the presidential palace in La Paz forced President Paz to leave the city and relocate to Sucre. The defence and education ministers resigned on 2nd of June following the earlier resignation of the Labour minister. On the 1st of June, Bolivia's largest union, the Bolivian Workers' Central, confirmed that blockades would continue and rejected dialogue until President Paz resigns. Other protesters, including residents and civic groups in La Paz department, have also pledged indefinite strikes and roadblocks until their demands are met. Also on the 1st of June, Attorney General Roger Mariaca ordered criminal proceedings against those involved in roadblocks. This follows legal changes that have expanded the government's emergency powers. Health officials have also appealed for roads to be cleared as hospitals face critical shortages of oxygen. On the 2nd of June, La Paz declared a health and humanitarian emergency, citing the shortages of medical oxygen, medicines, food, and other essential goods. The US stated on the 4th of June that it would provide emergency assistance and support to help with the food and medical shortages. The rising death toll and economic losses, estimated at over $1.68 billion have likely increased the chance of President Paz declaring a national state of emergency. Recent legal changes have also removed several constraints on the executive's ability to impose emergency measures. The Attorney General's move to pursue criminal proceedings is likely an early step towards a tougher security response. By treating roadblocks as criminal acts rather than political protests, the government is likely to justify stronger intervention, pressure protest leaders, and build public support for coercive measures if the unrest continues. President Paz has already reversed several decisions and cut his own salary, along with those of his cabinet, by half. However, these concessions have failed to reduce the protests or reopen key transport routes. His refusal to engage directly with civic leaders is likely deepening grievances, and protesters are unlikely to accept anything short of his unconditional resignation.
While Bolivia's political crisis continues to deepen, authorities in the Philippines are assessing the impact of a major earthquake and the challenges of recovery.
Early on 8th of June, a magnitude 7.8 earthquake struck 24 kilometers west-southwest of Burias, Philippines, at a depth of 35 kilometers. Multiple people were killed and more than 200 injured, with widespread infrastructure damage and flight disruptions reported. The main quake was followed by more than 130 aftershocks, ranging from magnitude 1.3 to 6.7. Damage was widespread across southern Mindanao. At least 20 structures were damaged, including a collapsed school, damaged buildings, severe damage to port infrastructure, and landslides into a lake. Power outages were also reported across several affected areas, while multiple flights were cancelled at General Santos International Airport. A tsunami alert was issued shortly after the quake for the Philippines and parts of Southeast Asia, including Indonesia, Japan, Malaysia, and Australia. Small waves were later recorded in Okinawa and the Ogasawara Islands, while tsunami waves were also detected along parts of Indonesia, Palau, and the Philippines. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. said evacuation centres were ready and operational. Government agencies have continued to assess damage and clear routes for rescue and relief operations. The Philippines is among the world's most disaster-prone countries. It is hit by around 20 typhoons and tropical storms each year, and its position on the Pacific Ring of Fire leaves it highly exposed to earthquakes. Recent major earthquakes include a magnitude 7.6 event in 2023, a magnitude 7 event in 2022, and the deadly Cebu earthquake of September 2025, which killed at least 79 people and injured more than 1,200. The Philippines' disaster resiliency remains weak. Preparedness, infrastructure quality, building standards, and emergency response capacity all shape the impact of natural disasters. Extreme exposure to natural hazards combined with poor resilience means disasters often cause severe human and economic losses. The earthquake may also have political consequences. In late 2025, nationwide protests erupted over alleged corruption in disaster resilience projects, particularly flood defences. Although the movement had largely declined by early December, the scale of this earthquake's damage may reinforce public concerns over weak infrastructure governance and disaster resiliency. A resurgence of protests in the coming weeks is a realistic possibility.
That concludes this episode of Regional Flashpoints on the Global Risk Podcast. These updates form part of our Global Intelligence subscription, which includes weekly reports, in-depth briefings, and live Q&A sessions with our experts. To learn more, visit solisglobal.com. Thank you for listening.